Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to National Donut Day. First episode of peer review as well. Alright, so what we are going to be talking about is an article from British Journal of Sports Medicine. Yes, we're talking academic journals today, which are not fun for most people to read, and that's why I will read them for you and tell you about them. Okay, we are talking about the training injury prevention paradox. What does that mean? Well, it really just means that you need to properly prepare yourself for whatever work you want to do. Otherwise, you're going to get injured, which seems pretty obvious, right? You just put it in fancy words. So I'm going to kind of go over some of the main points and what it's about, guys, and I will actually post it for you later. That way you can read it if you really want to. You can see some of the parts that I highlighted as well. So in fancier terms, basically they're talking about high chronic workloads, which is your training, decreasing your rate of injury, non-contact injuries. So I mean, those are just going to end up happening, which is usually like a knee blow in football, which usually calls like an ACL, MCL sprain or tear. So non-contact soft tissue. So that's stuff that is not bone. So it's your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments occurring in training or in competition, but not from an injury of contact. So someone not hitting you. Because that, I mean, you can prepare it all you wanted to, but if you get hit awkward enough, doesn't matter how built up and strong you are, or how prepared you are, an injury can happen. Just like breaking a bone. Sometimes it's just unfortunately luck of the draw. Okay. What they looked at was actually rugby players, but their findings actually apply to different areas as well, which are really interesting. The first one, main point that you kind of get from it, is that it reinforces the 10% rule. The 10% rule that coaches use is I do not increase my training loads more than 10% each week. Okay. So if I start to do that, basically my body cannot balance between the applied forces that I'm kind of putting on it, as well as recovery. And without that balance, you lean more towards injury, or if you don't have enough of a stimulus and you have too much recovery, essentially you're not working the body to where you should, which means that you're just not going to get any better. So there's kind of trying to draw that line and follow that. So it reinforces that. Excuse me, bless me. Okay. The interesting part that I got from this, though, was the fact that they developed a little formula, essentially, to measure chronic and acute, so chronic being over many, many weeks, acute being each and every week, the workloads. And I'm not just talking about the easy ones to calculate, which are your external loads, so how many meters did I sprint, how many times did I lift a certain weight, or how many times did I shoot a basketball. Okay, they're talking about the minutes of each practice as well as the RPE. So that's the rating of perceived exertion. So how I felt, how hard I was working. Okay, and by kind of quantifying, obviously it's not super accurate because it's very, very subjective. It's not objective at all, so it's dependent on the person. You know, I can say, okay, I felt like I was working very easily. It was a very easy workout, so I'm somewhere between a 3 and 4. And I did it for 60 minutes. So I would apply that. If it's 60, then it's 180. And therefore, I start to get a number that I can associate with my training times. And by looking at certain times, we could therefore get a certain number and tell, all right, am I working at a very high level for a very high period of time, which is going to be on that end of higher injury risk, or am I looking more in that middle range, which is where I want to be, and slowly increasing that number, or am I somewhere too low and either am I in my recovery phase, or am I just not, getting the correct stimulus that I need? So it was very interesting to actually see a quantification of kind of that subjective area that you can add into the training, and by doing that, you can take a ratio between your acute and your chronic training. So I can see short-term versus long-term, and there's actually a specific ratio that you want to be in, and it's somewhere between 0.8 and 1.3 for your acute to chronic, which is actually a safe range to be in. If you're somewhere between 1.5 or above, that's going to put you into somewhere that actually starts to predict an increased rate for injury. So they were able to actually accurately predict, for the most part, these non-contact soft tissue injuries based upon their training levels and those numbers that they started to create, which is real nice and interesting for them to kind of do, because that's something that I haven't really seen before. I mean, it's very easy, obviously, to track. I mean, if you're a runner, to track your mileage, and that's the biggest one that I ended up learning. The 10% rule was, you can take your weekly mileage, multiply it by the 10%, and that's how much you should increase at most. You don't have to, but you can increase at most and kind of tack that on throughout the entire week. And you wouldn't just, I mean, you could add it on for a long run if you wanted to, and just add, like if I was running 30 miles a week, I can add 3 miles to my long run, or I could disperse 1 mile between 3 different days. Either way, I'm getting the amount of training stimulus that I need without really going too far. And that was interesting to kind of be able to add that subjective to it, put those numbers together and be able to see a long term and actually predict, all right, I'm training too much, I need to back off. Especially when it comes to different training periods, there's different numbers that you should be in with the range as well, and they also give you that, and that's something I highlighted in there when you read it. Was looking at, all right, I gotta be, and the numbers they gave were somewhere around 3,000. I don't have the specific ones in front of me, and it had to be just about half of that during your competition phase, which makes sense because you're competing. So that's going to be more of your actual training stimulus. It's like soccer players. Soccer players, for the most part, a lot of their fitness is in-game fitness. It's not necessarily during their training. So alright guys, so my camera ended up deciding to die on me, so we're back again. Okay, continuing where my train of thought left off, was with soccer players increasing their fitness in-game day fitness. So, I mean, you don't see a lot of super high training during season. You see a little bit more like mileage. Same thing when you look at distance runners. You would look at like a base phase. So they start to put in just volume at that point. Then you get into right before kind of their competition phase, you have a bit more of their quality, with somewhat of a decrease in mileage depending on who the coach is and what their philosophy kind of looks like. But then during the competition phase, you have a little bit of quality still there, a little bit of mileage still there, but the primary focus is on each and every race. So you don't want to add in too much stimulus. And at one point they talk about the injury rate for baseball pitchers, and somebody pitching 100 innings versus, I don't even remember. Here, let's take a look. It's a whole lot lower. It's just ridiculous. 100 innings in a season versus someone who threw 100 pitches. Okay. It's obvious, right? Like, hopefully it's obvious for most people. But if you look at it, so not only one is someone throwing a lot more, so that should automatically tell you, all right, suddenly I'm at an increased risk for injury. Because if you look at it one way in particular, all right, if I'm going to do something over and over and over again, something's bound to happen. It's like walking across the road when I have my eyes closed. I can do it one time, nothing happened. Okay, I can't associate that with, oh, it'll never happen. Like, oh, great. Like, if I do it over and over again, eventually something's going to come along and hit me. Okay. If I do things over and over and over again, especially when it comes to the gym or sports, because I have a higher amount of incidences, as to say, that means that my percentage for something occurring is going to increase naturally. I mean, there's just more exposure, there's going to be more risk. Okay. But obviously we'll want to try and mitigate that. So journal's really nice. It's a good reiteration to certain rules like the 10%, or always watching, your training volume, your recovery. Okay. So I'll have this posted later for you guys if you want to take a look at the article itself and read it yourself. It'll be highlighted in certain areas. I can always show you my little notes if you guys want to as well. So shoot us an email if you have any questions regarding it, or if you have anything that you want us to review or take a look at, let us know. Email us at teamtrain@trainathletics.com, or you can shoot us messages on Facebook, Train Athletics, follow us there. Follow us on Twitter, it's Train Athletics, and then Team Train, and the Instagram, because everybody loves the pictures. Also, enjoy National Donut Day. Don't go crazy, but Body by Donuts. Check it out on the merch store. T-shirts, sweatshirts, mugs. It's awesome, guys. And always, live, love, love.